I'd like to call to order the May 22nd, 23 Parks and Recreation Committee meeting. I'm Commissioner Nick Scull. To my left is Commissioner Cheryl Lockard. To my right is Commissioner Anthony Prusi. Sean Kilkenny, our attorney, is here, and Pat Stacio is our Parks and Rec representative, and Randy Scheibel is our executive rec. Sit in. Are there any presentations or announcements?
There are no presentations.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes for April 17th?
You're good.
Yep. Look at me, no comments. Okay, pass that on. All right, jump right into the Parks and Recreation Department report.
Thank you, Commissioner. A couple of highlights from the department for the month of April. You may recall the board approved us applying for a $1.25 million grant through DCNR to the Land and Water Conservation Fund. DCNR did pass that grant request on to Land and Water Conservation Fund. We've spoken with them. They're looking very favorably right now on that grant application. In fact, I have another meeting with them on Thursday of this week to go over the process, which is always a good sign, right? So if they're not interested, they're not going to talk to you about the process. It does take a little longer than a typical DCNR grant. Typically, DCNR, we'd find out sometime in October, November, December. We probably won't find out until late winter or early spring if we do get the 1.25. But right now, we have a finger crossed, and we're in a good position.
And this is for Woodlawn Park?
Woodlawn Park.
Okay, great.
Likewise, we did apply for a grant from DCNR for the purchase of Woodlawn Park. We were awarded that grant. We've submitted all of the paperwork and everything has been approved. The only thing we're waiting on, the solicitor's office has to change the text on the deed, because when we bought the property, we did not have the grant. And part of the agreement with DCNR is that you have to have some verbiage in the deed that it was purchased with assistance from DCNR. So the solicitor's office is working on that, and it's being submitted to the county. Once we have that document and that's all approved, we'll submit that and we'll get our $200,000 back. So very positive outlook there. We also received a grant from Divot, but it was a DVPLT, something like that. They changed the acronym for some bleachers to replace existing bleachers at our parks. The bleachers that we have in some of our parks are 4-row bleachers. Consumer Product Safety Commission changed the guidelines for 4-row bleachers. They now have to be enclosed. So our bleachers did not pass. We received a grant to replace those bleachers. They've been ordered. We're expecting them later this week. So we'll have new seat bleachers for fans at Pledgey Park. On the recreation side, of course, our summer camps, registration to open up in April, and supervised playground filled in about 8 minutes. We were able to hire some additional leaders over the past several weeks, so we got most of the folks on the wait list into our program. We are at capacity at each of our sites, 80 at each, with the exception of first graders. I think we take 40, and we do have anywhere from 4 to 10 people on a wait list still to get into our programs. Payments are due this Friday. Many times folks register and then they find alternatives for the summer. So we expect we'll have some cancellations and we'll be able to slide some of the waitlist folks in. We did talk about our pickleball tournament last year that our recreation staff, Kate and Jen, ran with the help of an outside contractor. It went very, very well. We were extremely pleased. We do have men's, women's, and co-ed softball off and running, and the seasons are going very well thus far. And on the maintenance side, all of our playgrounds have had safety surface added to all of them. We use an engineered wood carpet. They're not wood chips from a tree vendor. They're an actual engineered wood carpet. And one issue we ran into for the entire month of April is the restrooms at Masons Mill Park. There were some problems in the pipes or the valves, and it took about 2 to 3 weeks to diagnose. Several calls to contractors to come out and fix the problem. We think we have it fixed for now. It is certainly something we're going to take another look at in the fall to make permanent fixtures. We kind of have temporary fixtures in there. The system is working. The system is flowing. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'm certainly happy about summer camp. Much better than we were doing last year.
Yes.
And even the year before, I guess.
Yeah, that's correct, Commissioner. You know, in 2020, the camp took a big hit, obviously, because of the pandemic. In 2021, we had to completely modify our program And we kept that in place for 2022, but now in 2023, we've gone back to what we did pre-COVID, and it's a complete full program once again, and the parents were very pleased to have it back in its normal form.
How's overall staffing?
I'm sorry?
How was overall staffing?
So we were very short up until March or April, and I talked with the manager, and we're now permitted to hire kids that are 16 and 17 years old, whereas before we were not. So we put that word out, and we have hired a couple of 16 and 17-year-olds, mostly 17, and we got some college kids to apply. So we feel wonderful about our staff, and very excited that we have a good mix of returners and new folks.
Perfect. Great. Glad to hear it.
All righty, let me jump back.
Thanks, Pat.
All right, could I have the library trustees report?
Good evening. My name is Dr. Anthony Gianetti. I was here a couple of months ago. Before I start, I want to thank everyone. This was my first meeting last time, and at the end of the meeting, I had several commissioners come up and welcome me, and it just reinforces the fact that if you don't know where you want to live, this is where you want to live. You guys are just fantastic, and I appreciate that. Just a couple of highlights. We're working on a community survey to reassess the needs of the community. We have changed our mission statement. I won't bore you with going through it, but it encompasses exactly what the library is trying to do. Some of the highlights: we had a scavenger hunt during Earth Day. We participated at Mason's Mill Park, gave out popcorn. That's always a big hit, you know, the smell of fresh popcorn. On Friday, the 26th, we'll have the representative coming to help with any services that the community needs, notaries, PennDOT support, senior scepter passes. The last thing is kind of interesting. You know, every time we have a board meeting, one of the members brings to our attention something unique. And this month, it was we have spice kits available at the library. And basically, you come and they give you the spice and recipes. And I had to laugh because this month, the spice was sumac. And as an Italian, sumac. I know garlic, I don't know sumac. But it's interesting because you get to learn new recipes and new ideas. And again, the mission of the library is to enhance. And so for someone like myself, I'm learning about sumac. So, you know, if you come to my house, you may have sumac. And they're like, what's going on? The last thing is we have a couple of authors coming, you know, virtually, and that's always popular. A lot of people really enjoy getting to speak with people whose books they read. And so we have one on May the 20th, and we have one on June the 7th. So again, with all your support, the library is a continued success. And again, so on behalf of the library and Margie, we thank you for your efforts and your support. And if there's any questions I can answer, I certainly will. Well,
all I can say is you're complimenting us, but it's really the staff in this town.
I agree. You know, I tell Margie that I think the library staff is, you know, even before I became a board member, they're helpful, they're friendly, they're committed, and for what they get paid, they're absolutely dedicated. So we appreciate all that. So
that was a great comment. I was going to say you can stop complimenting us because you're already on the board. But that's fine too.
But thank you. Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, old business. Farmstead Park Structure Improvement Project rebid. Mr. Stacy.
Thank you, Commissioner. You may recall we went out to bid for structural improvements at Farmstead Park. The bids came back too high. Met with Farmstead Alliance, the engineer and the architects, and Kate, who's in charge of this project for us. And we talked over our plan of attack, and what we want to do now is re-advertise bids for the carriage house specifically. The carriage house was a majority of the previous bid packet. And what we'll be doing there is restore the carriage house roofing system, remove the existing roof to include the dormers and cinder block chimney, the front bay windows. Repairs will be made to the west sill plate and reinforcing of the peak of the roof with interior support beams, frame out the front facade, and use the remaining wood planks to complete that window area. We will also replace the shed, which is kind of an outhouse on that structure, and replace it with a new structure framing, and use some of the existing walls and add new primary beams to support all of that work. So it's pretty detailed work. Our cost estimates are that it will come in under the grant allotment. And what I'd like to do is get approval from the Board of Commissioners to advertise this project for bid. Bid specifications are being prepared right now. We would advertise in early June and again in mid-June. Plan to open near late June, and award hopefully in July.
Great. Also, I hope, yeah, I thought this was going to be happening last summer, so, yeah.
So I have a few questions. So, the original grant money, the original bid was for a broader scope that touched all of the buildings, and that was, we assumed, that the cost would come in within that grant amount and we would get a whole bunch of things done. So now what we're doing is we're taking that same pot of money and we're focusing it down at the carriage house, but we still have that other work to do across the park in total. What I'm concerned about is still getting that work done and finding money for that work. The Farmstead Alliance put together a great project plan and allocated certain funds to get this work done over X amount of years. That's what we were asking for. We got it. At this point, though, that sort of had some holes riddled into it. So do we have a newer comprehensive plan of how we can start to chip away at the rest of these?
So a couple things for you. First, we're hoping we did talk to the granting agencies. This project will still fit under the granting agencies.
Okay.
We're hoping that by changing our bid structure and going to pen bid, we're going to see more bids, which may result in a less expensive project if we have more folks bidding on it.
Okay.
So depending on what the numbers come in at, if we have extra money, air quotes, we can go back and take a look at how we're going to attack the farmhouse.
Yeah.
And what needs to be there. Remember too, the farmhouse's roof can survive a bit longer. It's not in complete disrepair.
Right.
We are also, with separate money, going to diminish the cottage, probably starting in about a month or so.
Okay.
And that will all be removed. And then we'll have down to the bare bones of the spring house from decades ago. And there's a plan to attack how to rebuild the spring house portion of that the Farmstead Alliance folks are working on.
Right.
We also have funding in there to assist with some of the work at the barn so that we can remove the fencing. We think all of that will happen. The big one will be, how much does this cost for the carriage house? How much money may be left? And how do we attack the farmhouse? There is not a plan in place until we see how much money we have available.
So I'm all for bidding this out. Perfect, that's fine. Maybe for next month, if we're all okay with it, if we could have a list of the projects, right? It's probably the same exact list that we had before. And you just rattled off a lot of solutions to a lot of those problems and a lot of those open projects. And it would be good to see what at least we have planned, what we think we're going to do to accomplish them, and then what's still open that has some question marks next to it, so we can start analyzing those and find a way to fund them or move them into a different timeline or something. That would be very helpful, because there's a lot of open questions for this stuff.
I talked to Alan Sentman today about all this, and my question that I knew the rest of the board would be asking, well, when is the fence coming down around the barn? And he told me that there's a plan for that. The board has already allocated $75,000 that was to go towards that repair, and he thinks that the fence will be down by the end of the summer.
I agree with him. The 75,000 does not include the 7,000 that was approved for fencing around the carriage house. So the 75 funds for that are going to be used to diminish the cottage and also make repairs to the barn and help out with some other of the items that Alan listed. But I certainly can put together if I can read my scribble as I was writing, I can put together the project, the cost, the timeline, and what will be accomplished in 2023 and what we think will remain. A lot of that info, some of that I'll fill in after we see what the bids are for the.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine, and honestly, like, you probably have an answer for 90% of this stuff already anyway. The other question I had is, what is the progress or status of the architectural review of the farm as a feasibility?
So they're more than 50% through that. We've met out there on a couple of occasions. We have a meeting later this week as well. They have all the measurements. They have other information of what the Parks and Rec needs would be based on the community survey and the information from Woodlawn. They've taken all of the measurements of the fields. They've plotted where a potential addition to the barn, if that's the direction we head, how it can fit and where it can go. We're going to review all of that. What we're missing now is underground utilities, and we're having difficulty, the township, locating underground utility maps. We don't have any in-house, so that's, I know where some of the water lines are and the sewer lines, and I know where the irrigation system is, but we're not sure if there's any other lines, so that's something that we're trying to resolve right now.
Okay.
But that plan, drop dead date is June 30th. I expect to have it before June 30th, but June 30th is when it must be completed.
Okay, great, so then we'll see something in July.
Yes, if not in June, depending on when it's done.
Yeah, sounds good.
What are the utilities would there be besides water and?
Right, well, we don't know if there's any underground power lines there, which we're pretty sure there's not. Are there any, where's the septic system? Is it, or, you know, what's underground there that we need to locate? I don't believe there's much underground, but we're doing a lot of research on that right now.
I'm sure that, I'm almost positive that the whole property was hooked up to the sewer system, because I have pictures of the sewer system going in, you know, in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, it definitely is hooked up to the sewer system. We don't know if there's an existing drum in the ground somewhere or septic tank, but we're just, you know, making sure we dot all our i's and cross all our t's.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Thanks, Pat.
The issue, I'm just, if I can just add one more thing, the side yard setbacks, if we did add a gymnasium there, are creating an issue between, as we head west from the barn, so towards York Road. There's a side yard setback, I want to say it's 40 feet, don't quote me on that one, but we would be right up against that, so we're trying to see how we can manipulate any addition, if we did put an addition on the barn, so that it would fit into our code.
Okay.
All right. Are there any questions? Mr. Spearing?
I had very similar questions that Anthony asked, so thank you for asking those about scope and extension of the grant if we needed it. But I just want to say that I support the sustainability of the carriage house, because I think it's the structure and, you know, most in need of, I guess, close to catastrophic failure. And so I like that you're shoring it up so we can save it. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, is there any new business? Are there other Parks and Recreation items? I got a number 8 here, it says there are. Okay. Are there any visitor comments? Commissioner comments?
I just want to draw people's attention to, in this room tomorrow night, the Historical Association will be holding a meeting and featuring the history of the Waldrow Fire Company. So I'm going to make every effort to try to make it myself. So it's a good one.
Great. All right, with no further ado, we're adjourned.